Hello, my Wellish friends. We're kicking off a new month all about lifestyle and routines, but not in a rigid, perfect morning routine kind of way, in a way that actually feels aligned with who you're becoming. And today, we're starting with something that impacts your daily life more than you probably are giving it credit to: your relationships. Melissa Nanavati is a relationship coach for high performers, TEDx speaker, and author who helps ambitious, driven people build relationships that actually support the life that they're creating. Blending neuroscience, biology, and lived experience, she teaches high achievers how to apply the same skills that make them successful in business to love, so they can stop leaking energy in their relationships and start creating real peace. Today, we're talking about how your relationships shape your daily life more than you think, what it actually means to build a life that feels aligned, not rigid, and how to pursue love without sacrificing your ambition or losing yourself in the process. Melissa, welcome to Wellish. I'm so excited to have you here with me.
Thank you so much, Sarah. I'm so excited to be here.
I want to start by talking about breaking that illusion of like, I have my life together, but something feels off. I'm just not 100% happy with how things are going. I know you work with high performers. So why do they still struggle in relationships even when everything else looks successful?
I think the biggest reason that I see high performers struggle that are both single and partnered is really about that they haven't actually applied the skill set that made them successful in business and having those routines within their most intimate part of their lives. They're treating it like a goal without actually putting it on their calendar.
Interesting. I love that. Okay. So then how did the relationships become an energy link instead of something that actually supports your life?
So much of it, everything, all friction really in relationship boils down to three things: unmet needs, unseen efforts, or unresolved issues. So, all problems in relationships or even in the dating process can really be bucketed into these three categories. And the way that we systematically address it, just like you would at work, you wouldn't let a project fail or go by the wayside. We need to start applying that same lens of reality to our most intimate relationship. And where I see hypermores get stuck is they say, oh, it'll take too much effort to deal with this. I'll deal with it later, right? So there's that kind of natural inclination to stay focused on work and then treat their relationship almost secondary in many cases
Mhm.
versus seeing it as something that can be a source of energy. And, there's so much research too about how open loops drain our energy. And so, what I work with clients on specifically is how do you systematically close those open loops in your relationship? That thing that you haven't really asked for yet, or that thing you haven't said you really need to deal with. And when we shove those down, it silently drains our energy everywhere else.
God, that's interesting. I love the application of how you got successful in business to your relationships because you're so right. Like so many of us think like, "Oh, okay, like I'll deal with that." That's obviously not like it's so weird saying it out loud. Like it's not the more
Right?
important thing. But like that's not true. That's so strange. What are can you give me like some signs that someone's lifestyle is misaligned that like even if you're productive and you're healthy and you're doing everything right, that something's not going well?
Yeah, so people that are easily triggered. Your trigger is
Mm.
is the gift. I am a big believer that anything you can't joke about, make light of, is an area to look. If you're very sensitive about something, especially if you're in relationship, you can't make jokes about certain aspects, that's a beautiful place to look to say, "Hey, all right, there's something here, there's some truth to this that makes it hard for me to engage with it in a light and playful way." And so if you are easily triggered by things your partner's saying or in general life, that means that we're not dealing with the emotional turmoil. Emotions and the way we kind of like topple over is when, if you think of like a glass and a glass has like 90% full of water and you pour a little bit of water over, it's going to spill. And
Mhm.
that's how it works in our relationships and our emotional cup, if you want to think of it that way. Is like if we have so much unresolved issues, things that we haven't looked at, and it doesn't mean going, back to childhood and dealing with every trauma ever, but it really in looking at how am I dealing with the things that really affect me in the day to day? Like, is there something that I haven't actually forgiven my partner for that makes me sensitive everywhere else?
And you said something so important that your triggers are the gift. That's so cool. I like that a lot because you are
Yeah.
like,
It's a
"Ah, I
radical
gotta suppress
reframe.
this." Yeah, 100. And
Yeah.
that's all. I'm obsessed with the reframe. I'm obsessed with the perspective shift. I think that like that is honestly what makes the biggest difference. So I love that.
For sure. And one of that too, one of the kind of key mantras I always say is like fear is your compass. Like if you're leaning into
Mm.
the moments that you're afraid, that's when you're experiencing the most growth. That's when you're closing the energy leaks in your relationship. Because really, if we're afraid to do something, it usually means we haven't done it before. We're unskilled. So the way that we develop, especially in relationship, is practicing being in the emotion, being in that space with someone, and really using like your fear as your actual compass, same as your triggers. But if you're like, I'm really afraid to talk about that, it probably means you need to talk about it.
Yeah, 100%. It's interesting because I realized that like a lot of the time when like I personally would feel triggered by something, that my immediate reaction with all of the self-improvement and learning and high achieving and doing everything right is to say, "Okay, I know I'm not supposed to feel this feeling. So I'm going to apply my tools and I'm going to get out of this like rut, this trigger. I'm going to work through it cuz I know it's not that big of a deal, whatever." But like it
Mhm.
really is suppression when you're doing that, that you're not actually feeling your feelings like you think you are. If you're aware of it, you think you're feeling them, but it's not what's happening, and using them as a gift to point you in the direction of where it would actually benefit you. That's huge.
For sure. Thank you. Yeah, and that's something I've seen work really, really well with a lot of high performers, right? So the thing that I always like to share is like if you're thinking about where do I begin with practicing like that muscle of courage, there's really kind of four core areas. This is true for if you're single, this is true for if you're in a relationship. The first is the courage to be vulnerable, and that's sharing your internal world. A lot of times, especially high performers, are like, I'm going to keep everything close to the chest. I don't need to
Mhm.
share the challenges I'm actually dealing with my partner, etc. So, like, starting with like, what is it that you're afraid to be vulnerable about? Because that vulnerability is actually what builds connection, and you know this too, and that's why you have such a beautiful, authentic podcast. It's in this sharing process that we build deeper connection, and the same is true in our relationship. The second kind is the courage to ask for what you need. And this is usually the biggest one that especially high performing women struggle with the most.
Mhm.
And being in that place of okay, if I'm afraid to do this, this is the place to lean in. And then third is the courage to ask for what your partner needs. Now, can also be a fear if you don't want to be not enough, if you feel like you can't fulfill what they need. So that shows up a lot. And then the last one is the courage to bring up issues to be addressed. So that is that real practice of closing energy leaks. And when we're systematically practicing all four types of relational courage, that's when we're experiencing the most growth and the most satisfaction in our relationships.
Interesting. Well, and I can picture if you are somebody that is trying to build a life, you're trying to be a high achiever, and you are that person that maybe puts your relationship on the back burner for the sake of your career. I can picture, or even if it's not your career and it's, you just want to go to the gym more or you want to do something that's for your own health. I can picture that you wanting to be more disciplined, you would have
Mhm.
to communicate that. You would have to talk about that with them if you're sharing your life with them in order for them to support you better. And I can picture not doing that, just for the not feeling safe or feeling like maybe you'll be judged, or if you don't follow through again, like whatever the situation is. So, like I feel like you could really mistake being disciplined for being aligned.
Absolutely. And, one of the things that I find most helpful, especially with couples, even when you're fairly early in dating, but is making a point and making that you talk about habits and routines, but making like a weekly ritual of checking in with your partner and saying, hey, what is one or two things I could do to support you this week? And here's one or two things that I need, and being hyper specific. Because where I see a lot of people struggle is when they throw out general things for support, like, I just want to feel supported. And I'll give you a great example of this. So there was a couple I was working with where the wife said, I just want my husband to make my daughter and I feel protected when we travel. They travel like every week for his work. And I said, okay, so what does that look like to you? What does protected mean? Like what are one or two specific actions he could do? And you'll never guess what it was that she wanted him to do.
I'm
Any
excited.
guesses?
Tell me.
Okay. So it was to keep track of their daughter's roller bag through the airport.
Oh.
How simple.
Oh, that's easy.
But for
Yeah.
her, yeah, but for her, it was like, oh, there's one more thing to manage, and I'm grabbing all of our bags. And so she's really
A hundred
frazzled getting through
percent.
the airport. And all she
Mhm.
wanted was him to keep track of the daughter's roller bag. But if she kept saying, make us feel protected, it's too vague and he can't act on it. So he stopped asking her what she needed because of that fear of
Mm.
not being able to do it. And so there's so much
Interesting.
power in specificity. Hmm. Because
Yeah,
support, what does
totally.
support mean to you? Do you have an example of like what would make you feel supported?
I feel like maybe like feeling like you're proud of me, like feeling like
Hmm.
you support, like I was gonna say support again, but feeling like that you want to make me feel good
Words of
about the things that
affirmation.
I'm doing. Yes, yes, thank you.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, so that's
Totally.
something you could share with a partner and being like, "Hey, I really want I like being verbally affirmed is really important to me." And so
Mhm.
when we can get more specific like that, that's when we actually get our needs met. But the more
Hmm.
vague we are, the harder it is for them and vice versa. So if you're asking your partner, what do you need? And they say, "Oh, just make me feel loved." Okay, what does that look like? Tell me the exact actions I can do and give me that roadmap so I can make you feel supported.
It's interesting because I think a lot of the time people shy away from that because they feel that if you are specific, it's like a cheat, like that you're telling them and then they don't actually mean it when they say it. But I think the important thing to note there is that if they love you, if they care about you, they're gonna do the thing that you asked. And it's all like a matter of gathering information. If you communicate that and they still don't reciprocate it, that's messed up. And if they do it, or if you communicate that and they do it, that's not, they're not doing it because you twisted their arm. They're doing it because they care about you and you communicated.
And it's a big reframe for people. Again, you mentioned reframes, especially for women. It's this I've noticed in working with women typically more than men, there's a resistance. Like, "Oh, if I tell him to buy me flowers, then it doesn't mean as much." But that's not
Mm-hmm.
true. We're not mind readers. I tell my husband buying me flowers once a week is the cheat code. That is the way to make me feel like really appreciated and supported, right? And that's going to be
Mm-hmm.
different for every person. And typically, and again, speaking in generalizations, men actually really, really appreciate this. I work with a lot of high achieving men, and they love actually finally knowing what they're supposed to be doing because they're very action driven, as are high achieving women. But just typically speaking, in the couples I've worked with and the data points that I have, generally there's a huge resistance from women on this, and men are like, "Please, please just tell me what to do." And
Mm-hmm.
that's where the
Mm-hmm.
habits come in, right? So if you make this a routine, check in with your partner once a week, every Sunday. I love calling it like Sunday support. It's a quick check-in before the week starts. Every week is going to look different, so what is it this week that would really make you feel loved and supported, and then taking it and treating it as authentic when your partner fulfills on it. Because to your point, I mean, they're doing it because they care about you, but they're also not
Mm-hmm.
mind readers.
Yeah, 100%. Do you have a good way to introduce that to a significant other? Because I do feel like a lot of men, I mean, I don't know, maybe women would be too, but I feel like a lot of men are more like resistant to the idea that the relationship should be, or you know what, I'm going to retract my men statement. I think people can be can be resistant to the idea that a relationship should be structured in the way that you're describing. Like I feel like a lot of people have the idea that, I mean, it is false, but they have the idea that it's supposed to be a fairy tale and we're supposed to be whimsically in love and that we don't need to do any of those things. And when you say, hey babe, like I think I want to sit down and do like a relationship audit, they're going to be like, audit, like relax. Like, what are you talking about? So, how can you bring that up?
That's a great question. And I always love making this super actionable. And one of my favorite ways to have people introduce this to your partner is just say, "Hey, I want to make sure I'm showing up for or supporting you in the way that you need. What do you think if we just do a quick check in every Sunday so we can stay on the same page because I really care about you?"
Yeah,
Right?
I
So
love that.
you got the nice sandwich. You've got, "I want this because this is how it benefits you. You want to be supported. Everyone wants to be supported."
Hmm.
So talking about the benefit to them, the request, and then closing with, "Because I love and care about you," or whatever that may be. So it's really about everything in delivery is about the nice sandwich, right? This is not a new concept, but when you start applying it to your relationship, you will get more of what you want. And getting more of what we want makes you a better person in your relationship and for your partner. It's not about being selfish, it's about filling your cup so you can show up as the best version of yourself.
Hmm. And so that kind of brings us back to those dynamics that you're trying to incorporate in your life as an individual and how
Mhm.
your partner can better support you through doing that. Because I feel like when you have those unresolved relationship dynamics, it really does impact your productivity and your mood and your self trust. Can you talk about that at all?
Yeah, I mean, this is really big. So, our brains, like the way our prefrontal cortex works, anytime we ask a question, we have to answer it. Now, we all are subtly moving through the day with certain questions and frames in mind. So if you are someone who has this like belief or idea that you have to do everything on your own, your partner doesn't support you, you're going to continually look for evidence to prove that that's true.
Mhm.
Now, if we change the question of like, what is my partner doing well? And so this speaks to one of my favorite routines that really helps fill everyone's cup is to share with your partner one thing you admire or appreciate about them every single day. That's how you end the day. And what that does is it orients you towards the positive. It shows you a different way to look and a different lens. So you're looking at, okay, I'm going to gather evidence for proof that they are supportive and excellent humans, right? So when we are looking at everything through a negative lens, it slowly decreases your energy. Every open loop you have is a energy zap. So if you have all these open loops, all this unresolved issues, unspoken needs, your brain is naturally going to look for evidence to show that it's still unresolved until you proactively resolve it. And so it really does negatively affect people. I mean, one of the things I love having people do in kind of like more one-on-one work is start by doing not a relationship audit, so to speak, but a scale of 1 to 10, what's your relationship satisfaction? And a scale of 1 to 10, how are your energy levels? And what's amazing to see, qualitatively, relatively speaking, but still kind of quantitative, right? Because you're self diagnosing, is over time, as people's relationship satisfaction goes up, so does their energy.
Interesting.
It is directly correlated because the person you spend the most time around, if you're constantly looking through this like really negative lens, that's going to bring your energy down.
Mhm.
If you're able to see them and assume positive intent all the time, that changes your energy. So it's one less thing that's causing friction. Like think about when you have a disagreement with somebody in your work or at your job. You feel like a certain amount of heaviness and friction every
Mhm.
time you show up to work,
Mhm.
right? Now imagine living with that person. That's
Mhm.
essentially what you're doing to yourself.
Yeah, wow,
And
that
that's
makes
why this
total
is
sense.
right? There's certain people you feel energized by, and then you don't by others. And usually it's when there's unresolved stuff.
Yeah, that is so interesting. I mean, and again, it's one of those things that when you say it out loud, you're like, of course, of course, if I'm worried about my significant other being mad at me or like a fight that we're having, your whole energy, even whether you want it to be or not, is just in that direction compared to
Hmm.
allowing you to get the things done that you want to do. And I feel like it's interesting because, I mean, obviously, this is a common dynamic that we have a relationship that is more of an energy suck than it's providing for you. And I want to know, do you have an answer at all or a theory as to why people normalize chaos or anxiety in relationships as just a part of their life?
Yeah, because it's easier to like stay stuck than to have to do something new.
Yeah.
Right? So it's the old saying like better the devil you know than the devil you don't. I think it's very true in relationship. It's like, okay, well, I'll just deal with this or this is normal. And I think another key part of this too is there's not enough role models of couples who are doing this consistently. So if you're seeing around you that everyone fights with their partner or everyone has like these big blowouts or there's always just stuff you just don't deal with, if that's what you're surrounded by, that's what you believe is possible. So it's unlimiting our belief of what's possible in a relationship. I mean, 3 weeks into dating my husband, we made an agreement to never let an issue fester.
I love
And I can
that.
tell you, we've had a lot of hard conversations. But on the other side of every one of those hard conversations is peace.
Mhm.
Really the path to peace is paved with courage. And it's those conversations that you're avoiding that is actually draining your energy and like keeping you from your next level. Because a relationship, when it's clean and clear, can be like your greatest force multiplier for success, health, wealth, everything that you want is on the other side of that. But if you're consistently having this like turmoil and friction, it's filling that emotional cup. So when little things happen, you're triggered, you're freaked out, you're having these really oversized reactions to what's currently happening. And it's not because you're nuts, it's because there's so much energy dedicated to these unresolved open loops.
Mhm. Totally. So, what would a relationship that actually supports your life look like just like on a random Tuesday?
On a random Tuesday. Well, if you're taking that structured approach, and I actually want to come back to something that you said earlier about why there's so much resistance to creating structure and routines in relationships, because there's this thought that you're going to lose all your spontaneity. But looking at it from like a neuroscience perspective, and really when we think about the neurochemicals that are at play that create that sense of chemistry and connection, you have dopamine, which is that key neurotransmitter that is like the reward system in the brain and it's activated through novelty and play. So let's say instead of just scheduling these check ins, you also schedule a surprise date and you switch off who plans it once a month. There's more dopamine produced when we have anticipation of something awesome happening. So you're anticipating going on a vacation, you feel that increased level of excitement and energy. That's dopamine. And you can create structure to actually create spontaneity. So scheduling a surprise date, taking turns of who actually plans it. Then the second neurochemical at play is oxytocin. So this is really the bonding hormone, and most people think this is only activated through touch, but it's also activated through sharing vulnerably, maintaining eye contact a little bit longer than what feels normal, right? So if you're on a date and you're in laughter and you're having a good moment, hold eye contact for a little longer. You're going to produce more oxytocin. And then the third is serotonin, which is your mood stabilizer. And this is really activated through positive social interactions, so like those good, deep conversations, as well as sunlight and exercise. So making sure that when you're going on these dates, you aren't just doing the same thing. Because over time, where couples lose that kind of new relationship feel and spark is really when they stop having new experiences together. And so that's when you see that decrease in dopamine. And everyone says, oh, the honeymoon phase ends. It doesn't if you're intentional. And that's the ironic part when you're creating intentional structure in your relationship, scheduling these things, making sure they don't fall by the wayside when work gets busy, that's actually how you keep the honeymoon phase alive forever. And I've interviewed couples that have been married for 40 plus years for a manuscript my husband and I just finished co authoring that's all about how to build a thriving relationship. And what we discovered is the couples that still feel like newlyweds after 40 years have so much structure in their relationships. They have so much play and they have so much intentionality that I think we start to think of structure as rigid, but really it creates room for spontaneity. That structure is intention. Just like you said, with these wellness goals that you may have, the healthy habits, the morning routine, the intention isn't to be restrictive, it's to be expansive. And so
Yes.
knowing that the intention there is different shifts your approach to it.
I love that. That is really intense. Like that's really powerful. I like the you just I mean and the way that correlates to everything. Like that it does totally open up your life in a way that if you allow it to. Like if you don't get rigid about it, if you don't say like it has to be this way and if it's not this way, you know what I mean? Like you can't get psycho
Yeah.
about it, but completely that if it opens things up so much more for you. I love that. So, I'm curious, you have a framework. You call it Brave, yes?
Yes.
Can
Yes.
you talk to me about that?
Yeah. So if you're listening and you're thinking, okay, I want to address this issue or this thing in my partnership I haven't talked about. So the acronym that I created is called BRAVE. And this kind of pulls in what I like to say, like the best of a lot of different frameworks in terms of how to approach having hard conversations, plus the added bit of the neuroscience backing and some action elements. So B stands for begin within. Anytime we get into a hard conversation with our partner, someone we're dating, I mean, this even applies to someone at work, you have to know what your goal is going into the conversation. Do you want to break a pattern, get more support, or do you want to feel more connected, right? So it's usually one of those three. It falls into one of those three buckets. So once you have clarity of like, all right, maybe there's a pattern that's been really challenging for us, we want to stop arguing every time we talk about XYZ. So knowing what that goal is, and then also getting regulated. So taking deep breaths, getting out of the parasympathetic kind of fight or flight state, and making sure you're in a really regulated state to talk about something that's causing friction is so key because the energy that you approach it with is what you're going to get back. If you're coming in hot and intense, your partner's going to get defensive. Like there's really no other option. And so, really making sure you're in a regulated state. And then R stands for request a time. Often we're catching the other person off guard. It's the end of a long day. They're not in a regulated state. So, saying, hey, I have something small I'd like for us to talk about, even if it's not small. Because if you say I have a big thing I want to talk about, nobody likes that. Nobody's like, we got to talk. That's
Yeah,
not a
100%.
fun experience. So it's just like, hey, I've got something small I want to chat with you about, when's a good time? So giving them permission to check in on the time. It may be right then. I'm somebody that if there's something wrong, I want to talk about it right now.
Me
My
too.
husband's not necessarily that way. Yep, exactly. So not everyone is that way. So asking when a time is, and then A stands for affirming and asking. So just like with the habits piece, you want to start with an affirmation of like, hey, I love you so much. I know we've been in this kind of rough dynamic. Could we talk about it? Or here's my request, right? So that affirmation is really key to make sure both of you are in a down-regulated state. And with this, you want to place a hand on either their hand or on their leg because it produces oxytocin. So when you're having these hard conversations, maintaining just the slightest bit of physical touch and both being sitting like seated makes a huge difference. Because if you think about when we're ready to like actually fight, you're standing. So never have a hard conversation standing. You want to be seated, place your hand on their hand. That also reminds you that you're on the same team. And then V stands for view and validate. So asking them, what's your perspective or what is the story that's coming up for you when we're having talks about XYZ? And then validating their emotional experience. We often skip this step because we think, well, if I validate them, it's agreement. But validation is not agreement. It's simply acknowledging the impact and the feeling, and making a firm a validation is actually how you get the other person to hear you. So I always love giving the example, if you bump into someone at the grocery store, you say sorry, right? I would imagine so. And you say sorry for the impact, not the intention. And that's all that validation is. It's
Interesting. What
not
a good
about the
way to
intention.
word it. Okay.
Because we feel defensive, right? We're like, I don't want to apologize. I didn't mean to make you feel bad. It's like, yeah, but that was the impact. Like, I'm sorry that my actions or what I said before hurt you. That doesn't make you wrong. That doesn't make them right. And it's critical for you to actually come to resolution. And then getting to that resolution, and E stands for end with action. So, what are you both going to do differently next time? What is each of your individual commitments to either support each other more, to stop the cycle of fighting, whatever that may be? So it's begin within, request a time, affirm and ask, view and validate, and then end with action. And so when we're doing all
Okay.
these 5 steps, and what I'll share with your listeners too, I have a link to a free downloadable that has this framework and exact scripts you can use. So your audience, everybody listening can get access to that for free.
Amazing. Yeah, absolutely. I would love to include that in the description for sure. I feel like I mean it is just so it's interesting to me how natural what you're describing is. Like if you've
Mhm.
had a tumultuous situation and then had a healthy dynamic, you can see like just the lack of those things in the tumultuous arguments compared to the healthy ones. And when you do have that healthy dynamic, a lot of the things that you're describing just naturally are how you navigate an argument. And I love though the structure behind it, like knowing intentionally that that is what you're doing. But it's important for me to highlight again that you're not going to say, okay, let me sit down with the acronym for this argument, like have the piece of paper in front of me and do this, right? It's more so that
Yeah.
you have the acronym in your mind so that when you're doing things and you realize that suddenly you're standing up and like try to drill your point home and you're like, oh wait a second, I can let me sit down, let me put my hand on your leg, like let's relax, because it really is like, I mean that is so bizarre to me, like the biology of it all, how our brain really does think that we're like about to fight a tiger or
Yeah.
something.
We're
But
fight
I
or
think
flight.
that, yeah, but I love that. I
Yeah.
think that's really powerful.
Thank you. And I really, I had clients who did actually pull out the framework, which is really funny, but only because both of them had been introduced to it. They literally had the PDF handout. They're like, now when we have our discussions, we have the PDF. So whatever floats your boat is what I'll say there.
Yeah,
If you're
whatever
somebody
works
who's
for
like,
you.
hey, this works for me, I want to have it out there, I'm going to, get riled up and forget, whatever that may be. But really just coming back to this as a loose framework, right? So, yes, ideally, are you applying it in the order perfectly? Yeah. But can you still have a productive conversation and get to resolution if you skip one of the steps, but you both are really empathetic towards each other and just immediately understand that this is not how you want to continue to engage? Of course. So again, it's not about that rigidity, and I think it's about being imperfect about it. And the first time you do it, it's not going to go perfectly. It's probably going to go sideways. And then you're all of a sudden going to forget, what was I supposed to do at the end? Should I come back and have this conversation again? And that's okay.
Yeah.
Because again, like a skill like anything else. You don't suddenly start playing chess at like a master level the first time you sit down to play. Same thing in a relationship. And that's what I'm a firm believer in, is that all skills in relationships are just that, skills, things that you only get better with practice. It's not going to be perfect the first time. And it doesn't mean it failed. It doesn't mean the system doesn't work. There's a lot of science to back it up, and it does. And I've seen it work a lot. But it's really about building a degree of intentionality when you have these discussions and not letting your emotions run you off sideways. And remembering too that an emotion, if we don't actually resist it or cling to it, only on a neurological level lasts in our body for 90 seconds. That's it. If we can just be with the fear, with the discomfort, with the whatever is showing up, acknowledge it, don't make it right, don't make it wrong, and just feel it, it'll dissipate. But the problem is, in that heat of emotion, in that rush of that chemical experience, we're making choices. And we're talking, maybe sometimes when we need to say, I actually need 1 minute. Like one of the best things that you can do when you get dysregulated in these conversations is just say, hey, I'm feeling dysregulated. Because there's neuroscience to show that when you say, I'm feeling and the emotion, it separates you from the emotion and it also decreases the intensity. So if you say, I'm feeling flustered right now, I need a minute or I need 90 seconds, and then come back to the conversation, that's a beautiful way to diffuse it and keep it from spiraling out, maybe the way it has in the past.
Yeah, 100%. I think that when you're implementing anything new like this too, I mean, the acronym is literally bravery. Like I think it does take like a certain level of courage to do that. Why is that so important? Like to have that courage when you're trying to make these changes?
So I always say, like, courage cannot exist without fear, right? That's just called walking
Mm.
blindly forward.
You've got so many good ones. That's so good.
This is the stuff I love. It means
Yeah.
so much, to me because I was not somebody who was brave. I was not somebody who was courageous in relationships. This was the part that I found most challenging. I was an extreme people pleaser. I had horrible anxious attachment. I was clinically diagnosed with an anxiety disorder. Like this did not come naturally. And so I spent a lot of time studying it and learning like what is it? How can I be better at this cuz I'm terrible at it, right? And so it was through that evolution and that process. And I think this is so critical because this is the only way to really have an authentic relationship. Like if we are just shoving down our needs, hiding when stuff is bothering us, like there's so much disconnection. There's so much disconnection. And we can never feel fully seen, fully appreciated in the way we want if we are constantly allowing our fear to keep us from being courageous. And I think courage of all virtues is the most critical virtue in relationships, in anything in life. And it's really that process of just being with that fear and trusting that this will get easier over time, because so much of why courage is important is like the thing that we're avoiding when we avoid talking to our partner or dealing with an issue is we're afraid of feeling the emotion on the other side of it. We don't want to feel hurt. We don't want to feel afraid. We don't want to feel abandoned, right? So there's a core fear there that we are trying to avoid, but we're not actually avoiding whatever the thing is. We're avoiding the emotion that it's going to produce. So I encourage people, and one of my favorite meditations to do, and next time you meditate, like really identifying like what is the emotion I'm avoiding the most, and spend time feeling it. Negative
Mm,
visualization. So
interesting.
if you yeah, so you spend time being in the emotion that you deem as negative, right? Because ultimately no emotions are good or bad. It's what
Hmm.
we assign to them.
Right.
And so fear just means you haven't done it before. That's pretty much it. And so if you spend time in the emotion, like my biggest fear was abandonment. So
Same.
I spent time, yeah, right here with you. So I spent time feeling it. I was like, what would it really feel like to just deeply feel abandoned? And then the key here is not to stay stuck in that feeling, but it's to go like kind of a high low. So low is you're feeling abandonment. Pop yourself up to visualizing, experiencing like what it feels like to be loved, appreciated, your family, etc. And then take yourself back and down into the emotion. Spend about 3 to 5 minutes in each, kind of going up and down, right? These high, low, until that low feeling doesn't have the same power over you, because it will dissipate. The more time you spend feeling it, the less it will control you.
Interesting. Okay, well, so my question to you then is like, I can picture, like, if I'm doing it to myself, if I'm picturing what it feels like to be abandoned, it's not as intense as like if you're actually abandoned. So, like, how does that work? Like, how can you truly experience it?
So let yourself go past like the basic feeling, right? So usually what you're doing is you're visualizing, you're intellectualizing it. So I'm guessing that the feeling isn't fully showing itself and revealing itself. So I don't go to just like, oh, being left by my partner, right? Like I go to everyone I love has died. I am completely alone. Like I want you to visualize the absolute worst case scenario and let yourself feel it and get truly worked up, because that's where the magic is. It's when you
Interesting.
fully feel it and you teach your body that it's safe to feel that, that you won't
Interesting.
die.
Oh my God, cool. Okay. I
Yeah.
love
So
that.
on a
That's really
biological level,
awesome.
I mean, that's how I dealt with my anxious attachment. That's how I became more securely attached, was doing these visualizations and this kind of meditation work. And I did this in a, at a retreat center, but I also continued that process on my own. And the way that I really cured that feeling of abandonment is because I spent so much time feeling it and like really, really feeling it, or even going back to an instance in your life where you felt it before. So that will make it more real for you, right? So if you're struggling with, I'm just going to visualize what that feels like go back to the moment where you first felt that, because you obviously felt it somewhere if it's still got a hold on you. And I did too. And so I went back to that moment of like, okay, that's what it felt like to be really devastated, and letting it just consume you. And then
Interesting.
bring yourself in that high emotion, right? So you're training your brain, it's safe to feel this.
Yeah, and then it makes it more of a neutral experience either way because, like you're saying, emotions aren't good or bad. Wow, that's
Yeah.
cool. Okay, I love
And
that.
developing a mantra. I love mantras, right? So that's why you were saying kind of like these one liners, like these mantras, like fear is your compass. I tell myself that all the time. Fear is my compass when I feel afraid of something. It doesn't mean these emotions go away, but when you have these mantras to help anchor you in the present moment, you're able to make choices in alignment with the future you want to create, because that's all habits are. Habits are making choices now in alignment of the future you want to create or the person you want to become.
Yeah,
And
totally.
similarly with our relationship, right?
How can you how can you do that? Like, how can you build the habits of the person you wanna become without abandoning yourself now? Like, without telling yourself you're not good enough now?
I think it's the recognition of acceptance, right? So that we're growth oriented. So always like looking at the future of who you want to become and saying like, hey, this is great, right? Like you don't have to say this version of you is bad, but we always have gaps and opportunities. So if you're looking at these gaps as simply opportunities, not that you're wrong now, that's how we can experience more growth. It's like anything. Like let's say you're weightlifting at the gym. When you want to increase the amount of weight that you can lift in a particular movement, it doesn't mean you're bad now, but there's distance between who you are and who you want to become.
Wow, okay, I love that. That's awesome. Okay,
So, like
cool.
anything else, right? So, it's not about being bad, but it's about saying, hey, what's the next opportunity?
What's the next
What's the
step?
next level?
Yeah, love that. So and there's 4 types of relational courage?
Yeah. So, that was the courage to be vulnerable, the courage to ask for what you need, the courage to ask for what your partner needs,
Okay,
and
right,
the
right,
courage to
right.
bring up issues to address. Yeah. So those types of relational courage are really your use that as your starting point of the ways to build the skills of relationship.
Okay, got it. So, would which one do you think people struggle with the most? The vulnerability?
So this is different between men and women in my
Ooh,
experience.
okay.
So typically, and I've worked with men's groups and women's groups, and this is what I've found really fascinating. And again, this is somewhat anecdotally, it's not a large study, but after working with, hundreds plus of people, I've seen some themes emerge. And the theme that emerged is that men generally struggle to ask for what their partner needs because of a couple of reasons. First, they don't want to feel like not enough if they can't do it. Second is that they don't want to be told, I already told you so, which is really unfortunate when you meet your partner with, but I already told you that, right? And not having that level of like appreciation for the fact that they want to do better. So, again, so that's typically the hardest one for men, is what I've found. Or they're afraid of getting a really vague response like, you should know, or I shouldn't have to tell you, something like that. And then for women, typically it's asking for what they need almost universally. I,
Love
and yes,
that. That's
the
a great
vulnerability is
pair.
true. Yeah, right. It's a really challenging pairing, is like asking for what you need and then the asking what your partner needs. So the thing I would say too, especially with the asking for what your partner needs, whether you are man or woman, is really pre-framing. So if you feel like maybe they've told you before, you're afraid of a certain reaction, using that fear as an opportunity to practice, hey, how can I hedge against this? Right. So, a great way to frame it is, hey, I know you told me before what you needed. I'm sorry I wasn't listening before, but I'm listening now. And whatever you tell me, I want to put in my calendar to make sure I don't forget. So, it's all about framing. Even asking for what you need, saying, hey, there's something small that would really mean a lot to me, instead of like, I need you to do this, right? Which can feel very intimidating. But saying, like, hey, there's something small that would really mean a lot to me. Could you do XYZ? And really distilling that down and starting with small asks. Don't start with the biggest thing you're afraid to ask for, right? Start small with both of these. What is the smallest kind of minimal thing that I could ask for that actually does mean something to me that I haven't in the past? So for a lot of women, it's actually flowers. Flowers is one of the easiest things that men can do
It's
to
true.
make you feel loved. And it's not, yes, it is, again, speaking in generalizations, and
Yeah.
it varies from person to person, but generally what I found is most women love when their partner surprises them with flowers. Very small thing to do, but it shows a certain degree of care and intentionality that is really what support is all about. It's about intentionality. So the more intentional the action is, it's not usually the big grand gestures that actually mean the most. It's those small moments, like remembering to pick up your partner's favorite dessert from the store, cooking a special meal, taking care of a chore that they normally take care of without being asked. These are really small intentional ways to make people feel cared for, that really put deposits in that like positivity bank of positive interactions with your partner. And so starting to become aware of like what are those things that I need, and even for men, the asking for what they need can also be really challenging because they'll say I don't need anything. I'm very self-sufficient. So both can be challenging for either, but I would say out of all four types, vulnerability usually for most people is a little easier, especially once they've been in a relationship for a while, even sometimes addressing issues. But the needs one is really the one where I see most people struggle the most.
Yeah. I think I really am loving right now this like back and forth we're kind of doing that. I feel like as we're talking about wanting to be able to build structure in a relationship in order for us to be successful in our own individual lives, it's so important to be able to communicate your needs, be vulnerable, like do all of these things and be able to be receptive to our partner when they tell us these things. So I think like it's obviously so interesting how you have to how the level of how much you have to nurture the relationship in order to receive back from it what it is that would help you support and grow your own life. I wonder, why do people feel like, because you mentioned at the beginning, like that people will prioritize their career more so. Why do you think people or women feel like they have to choose between success and love?
Because I think for many reasons. First of all, I was used to be somebody who felt like, okay, I don't have time for a partner yet. I'm focused on my goals. But oftentimes we're viewing the relationship as something that is going to take because we're not practiced at the types of relational courage, because we're not practiced at resolving issues. So if all your relationships in the past have been kind of energy drains, there's going to be resistance to getting into a new one, to the process of dating, right? We really see a lot, and this men and women see the dating process is taking so much time, so much energy, so much emotion, right? That I don't have to give because I have these goals. But the truth is that it actually takes far less than what we anticipate. Like this story we create in our head about how much time it's going to take is often a lot less. Like let's say at most you're going on one first date a week. That's like 3 hours. You probably spent that much time chilling on the couch at some point during the week. But we create big stories about what it's going to mean. And we over emphasize on being chosen versus doing the choosing. So we're like, I have to make this person like me, right? There's a lot more emotion if you're not in a place of discernment and you're in a place of like, I have to impress, I have to be like top notch. And if I get rejected, it's going to ruin my whole week, right? So building our tolerance also to rejection is really important. And I'll tell you a very horrifying but effective method that I used for this. So my, my friends used to kid me that if I was interested in a man, they could tell because I would look the other direction. I would be like, nope, I'm nervous. I don't know how to engage. I don't know what to do. So I made a rule for myself for about 6 months that every time I went to the gym, I had to talk to 3 people before I could leave.
Oh my
It
God.
was horrifying.
Yeah, I believe you.
But I will say, not everybody needs to do that, but I call it like my rejection reps, right? Like I went in not actually with the intention of meeting someone through that, but getting comfortable and confident in being rejected.
Mhm.
Because
Mhm.
again, we don't want to feel it, and I it was so embarrassing and delightful because now looking back on it, it's hilarious and it's amazing because it really did get me over that, right? So I've actually asked out a number of men. I've usually been the first to initiate, even with my husband. I asked him on our first date.
No
My husband,
way. I love
yeah,
that.
he's like a US Marine. He's a extreme adventurer. He does endurance stuff. And he was like, if you had didn't ask me out, we wouldn't be here today.
Get out.
Because that confidence in other areas doesn't translate to relationships. And
Mhm.
that's why we find it so hard. You know, he does all these
Wow.
like some of the scariest things on earth. And asking me out not was not going to happen. And so really getting comfortable with that rejection. And there was even one incident for me where I had asked a man to take out his AirPods mid workout. I didn't have a plan. I don't recommend doing this without a plan.
I love that.
And it was like the equivalent of asking like a monk, like bothering a monk mid meditation, right?
Oh,
So this
yeah.
was like, this was not it. I do not recommend going in without a plan.
Mhm.
I ended up asking him how to use a workout bench, which was the dumbest question, but the only thing that popped into my head.
I love
So,
that.
but truly, like getting used to those interactions and being rejected, because that's the thing we're avoiding. We're avoiding the, again, the feeling of rejection. And so if you train in that feeling, it's going to be a lot less scary. And so I got to a point where I could be rejected. Again, there's still like a twinge, right? It's not like I'm not feeling that fear and that pain, but it didn't have as much of a hold over me. And
Yeah.
so that's what I would encourage anyone listening. If you're like really afraid of being rejected, start asking for little things, right? Ask for someone to help you with something. Just small things that can kind of build your tolerance to asking for help or asking questions or talking to a stranger, right? So make a point of talk to one stranger a day. Like that could be something you do for a week and just see how it shifts your internal experience of approaching people, of talking to people, and ultimately all those social skills will aid you in the process of dating. So it's like we're afraid of this rejection, but if we train in that feeling, going on that date and not getting a call back is not going to affect you as much. It's
Mhm.
simply not. And operationalizing it. Again, I love a good calendar and I did this for myself. So I aimed to go on a new date every week. And if I was not on a new date, I was spending that exact time like going to a new event, trying to meet people at events, or spending time on the apps, whatever it was. But I was like, once a week, 2 hours a week, I'm going to dedicate to dating. That's not that much time. It's
Mm-mm.
really not. And
Mhm.
it's very manageable. So you're not trying to go on like a gajillion dates in a week,
Yeah.
right? It's not like I need to go on morning, evening, afternoon dates, whatever. That's not the point.
Yeah.
The goal is just to go on one
Yeah.
date.
Yeah.
That doesn't really take up that much time. And so I think we can remove the excuses for ourselves when we make it more bite-sized and more approachable.
Mhm. Yeah, totally. I love that. And again, the systemization of it all, like just that it really is something to be intentional about. And I really love that you made a note to say that it's not that you don't feel those feelings at all anymore. It's that you can, because of your systems that you've created, you can manage them so much better and it's become more of a neutral experience. I think that like your idea of being able to either visualize that feeling and sit in that feeling how you were describing earlier, or doing the exposure therapy like you're talking about now, really does allow you to like realize that you will survive. You will be okay once you put yourself in that situation and realize that life goes on and you're capable of dealing with it. It's like a self-trust exercise almost in a sense.
Absolutely. And a big part of that too is not overvaluing the opinions of others.
Yeah.
Everything in personal development is about that, right? Getting over the fear of missing out, getting over the fear of rejection, because the truth is nobody really thinks about us as much as we think about us.
It's
And
true.
yes, you might have one really awkward interaction that you think about for the next week, but the other person forgets about in the hour. And that's what doing that exposure therapy taught me, was that nobody really cares.
Mhm.
And even if they do, that's okay, because I value my opinion of myself more than I value their opinion of myself.
Mhm. Yeah.
And again, easier said than done, right? Of course, we care about our reputation. Of course, we care about being liked, loved, whatever that may be. But we still have to value our opinion of ourselves above all.
Mhm.
And if
Totally.
we're happy with who we are, if we're happy with how we're engaging, right? If we can have these interactions and really, again, come from that place of being the chooser, not the chosen, you're going to engage in the dating process in a whole new way. Because
Yeah.
when I went on a lot of dates looking to be liked versus being like, is this somebody that can really add to my life? Totally different space, totally different quality of people I was dating.
Mhm.
Right? Because you're not going to go for somebody who is an equal or someone who actually pushes you to grow in a big way unless you are being from that place of want, not need. So
Yeah.
dating from a place of want, not need. You don't need that person, but you want them. And that's a
Mhm.
beautiful space to be engaging from.
100%. I think that like that is really the pivotal choice, being the chooser compared to the chosen,
Mhm.
in how you can pursue a relationship and still achieve what you want to achieve. Like that you can
Exactly.
still expand and live your life and do all of the things that you want to do because you're choosing somebody that supports that compared to just, somebody's interested in you and you think, okay, well, this is fun. This person likes me. It's fun to be liked. It's fun to be loved. So I'm just going to ride that wave for as long as I can. And suddenly you're with someone that's totally not in alignment with you.
For sure. And again, if you're a highly motivated person, I always say you need to date a highly motivated person also, or someone who at least appreciates it, right? Because there are couples that I see work where there's actually one couple I think of in particular. She even says, and her husband will say the same thing. He's like, I'm not a high performer, but I love that she loves to work all day, and I respect the heck out of it. And so it's about that mutual respect and the appreciation. So whether you're dating someone else who's a high performer or self-described, or who isn't, but just really respects and honors your ambition and your drive to be better, to be healthier, to be all these things, that can work too. But there has to be that high degree of like celebration and respect regardless. And so really finding someone and being discerning on okay, I want to date somebody who is heading in the same direction or can support me in the direction I'm going, and being clear about that early in dating. Don't go past date 3 if you think this person is not going to celebrate who you are. And that's so key, is like making sure you're value aligned and lifestyle aligned. So there's really kind of two categories when people make their kind of ideal partner list. It can either be like overly rigid, like hair color, height, whatever, right? Or you can get down to what matters, which falls into character values and lifestyle values. And that's it. You want a couple in each of those. So, lifestyle doesn't mean you have to do the same things. My husband and I could not be any more different if we tried. I am a self described indoor girl. He is like
Oh
literally the ultimate outdoorsman. Like, he attempted to ski across Antarctica last year
my
for fun.
God. Oh my
So,
God. That's hilarious. And you're like, I'll be on the couch. Have
I'll be
fun.
like, "I'm home in Arizona. Love
Yeah.
you. Have fun in the cold." So, but we celebrate and support each other, right? And so you don't have to be the same, but the core lifestyle value that we shared is a desire for adventure and for new experiences. We're both very experiential people. I've tried cross country skiing because of him. He's tried dancing because of me. And so it's that celebration, that openness that really makes for a strong foundation. It's like you got to have some lifestyle things kind of in alignment. Another big one for me is I don't drink anymore. So I got sober 8 years ago. I was not going to date somebody who even was a casual drinker, which limited the pool quite a bit. But my husband also happens to be sober. And so when you really align on the things that matter, so those couple of lifestyle values and then core character values, like for me, loyalty is a big one, high integrity, right? Getting an idea of what those are, then that changes your filtration process completely. It changes the types of questions that you're going to ask on these dates. Like one of my favorite first date questions to ask is, who do you admire most and why? And the why is actually that person's values. So
Mm. Whoa, cool. I love that.
yeah. So there's ways to ask questions to get to the stuff that isn't like, what are your values? Right?
Yeah,
Nobody wants to go on a
100%.
date saying that awkwardly, but there's ways to discern what someone's values are without having to directly ask them. And so asking more intelligent questions that help to elicit that information is really key, because everyone's going to speak aspirationally. If you say, what are your values? Someone's going to give you this, the sun and the moon and say
Right.
everything. But if you ask them who they admire and the reasons why are actually their values. And you can also start to learn this through the stories they tell you about themselves. One of the early stories that my husband told me about him was that earlier this summer, or the summer before we met, he was really stressed leading up to a presentation because he decided to help his friends move. What did that story tell me? It told me that he was extremely generous. He didn't say he was generous, but from that story, I could discern like, what are his values? How does he engage with the world? So get people to tell you stories on dates. And that is a great way to quickly assess like, is this person a high value person that I want to be around? Their stories will tell you the most.
Yeah, completely. It's so interesting because when you go at it with the values lens, I learned that recently as well. That like
Mm.
it's funny because you think you know your own values, and I totally didn't until I sat down with a list of values and had to like mark what were my top 15 most important values is what I did. And it was like, "Oh my God, like the people that I've been with before A, I don't even know if they had any of the values on this list, or B, definitely weren't the same as mine. So it's just interesting when you approach it from that lens, because I can think of people I've dated in the past and think like, wow, if I had listened to that conversation with this lens, I would have been like, you're not a quality person. But for whatever reason, you sit there and you make excuses and you think, oh, well, they're just quirky. They're just, whatever. And suddenly you're, swept into something that you shouldn't be with somebody that's not in alignment with you. So I think that's really interesting. And I love the ways to bring it out of people without, directly asking, because you're completely right. If you do that, people are just going to say whatever. It
They're
sounds
just gonna say
good.
loyal no matter
Yeah.
what. If they've cheated in the past, it's not going to
Right.
matter, right?
Exactly.
So,
It doesn't matter. Right.
and
Totally.
your experience is so normal and was mine as well. Like I was dating without a values filter for, I mean, before I met my husband, I actually went on over 100 first dates, not
Wow.
intentionally. Not
That's
intentionally. He's like,
awesome.
"Do you have an intention?" I said, "No." I wanted to meet him on date 1.
Yeah.
'Cause that's the truth. I wanted to meet him early. I thought I was gonna be somebody who was married in my 20s. I was like, "There's no way." And I just kept going on all these dates because and I could make excuses for people, right? To your point, they tell like, "Oh, they're just quirky," or whatever it is, because you're very accepting, and that's a good thing.
Hmm.
It's good to be accepting and open, but if you're doing it without a values filter, you're gonna go on a lot of weird dates, and you're gonna end up in a lot of situationships. You're gonna end up on a lot of weird relationships. And it doesn't mean if you have in the past that's wrong. I mean, we both did, but it's really bringing that higher level of, again, intentionality to your dating. If you're investing your valuable time in going on these dates, my goodness, do not go without a list. Like, know that list in your head. Have just a couple. It doesn't need to be long, but 2 or 3 character values, 2 or 3 lifestyle values, and, your non negotiables should fit somewhere in there, but really getting crystal clear on that because it'll make the dating process better. It'll help you also not waste someone else's time too. It's not just
Hmm.
about us. It's not respectful to date someone you know
Yes.
isn't it. It's not. It's
Yeah.
it's the one of the most unkind things you can do is to drag it out with somebody who's not it.
Yeah. Amen. Absolutely. So, if someone is in this situation right now that they feel like, things are going well in their life, but they don't have, good relationship things going on, or just that they feel like if they had more support from their partner, they could have it, or maybe they're single and they are wishing to get into a relationship with somebody that's more in alignment with them, what would you tell that person?
So for those who are in a relationship and they feel like it's just not going well, I start with the 4 types of relational courage. Like really self-identify, having listened to this, do you struggle the most with being vulnerable, with asking for what you need, asking for what your partner needs, or bringing up issues? Get clear on what you find most challenging, and then start practicing it. And start practicing it in a small scale way, like something we've talked about, because that is going to be your entry point. It's not about solving all your relationships in one fell swoop. It's about incrementally making changes that are closing those energy leaks so you can show up as the best version of yourself. And if you're single and you're in this process and you're like, I don't want to go on 100 dates like this woman, I got you. Don't need to do that. Start with getting your values list and then set aside, put a recurring reminder every week. Maybe it's on a Friday, maybe it's on a Saturday. Block 2 hours and fill that time with something that gets you in new spaces to meet the right kinds of people, or try something online, try like a dating app, whatever that may be, but intentionally dedicate that time, because there's no fitness goal you would have without saying I'm going to go to the gym. There's none. And so similarly, if you have a goal to date good people, don't just keep setting this aside. Like intentionally create that space in your calendar and hold yourself accountable to doing something that puts you in those right environments, being the first to approach. Or if you're someone who's like, I'm absolutely terrified to approach people, start some of the, like what I like to call rejection reps. Like make a point of every time you're in a space, say hello. Just say hello to someone. You can be in a coffee shop, say hello to someone and ask them what their name is or how their day is. But start having conversations so you can build the muscle of courage. So when the opportunity presents itself, you don't miss it.
Mm, I love it. To wrap us up, I love to play a game with my guests. It's called Kinda Toxic, Kinda Well. Essentially, the point of the game is to highlight that we're all human, even though you are so advanced in all of this knowledge, like that you still have these feelings. But a lot of the time, because you are so advanced, you give really good advice. So, whatever you feel called to say about any of these questions, I have 8 rapid fire ones if you are down to play.
Oh, so down.
Okay, absolutely. So, who are you jealous of?
Ooh, who am I jealous of? I would probably say even my husband. My husband
I love
has like
that.
an incredible way with people, and I mean that in like the most admirable way possible. But like, my husband has a way with people that is just like something really aspirational for me. He makes like all these high level connections, like seemingly out of nowhere. I'll give you a great example. So he got the Dalai Lama to endorse his first book, Fearvana, as
What?
a first time author. As a
Who is
first
your
time author.
husband? He
He
sounds
cold pitched.
awesome.
My husband is Akshay Nanavati. Yeah, so he cold pitched the Dalai Lama and got his endorsement. Like
That's
my
so
husband has
cool.
an incredible way with people. So if I would say I'm jealous of someone, it's my husband in the
I
most
love
loving way
that.
possible.
Yeah, that's a great answer. That's so sweet. What's a moment recently where you caught yourself ignoring your own needs or that you chose yourself instead?
Ooh. I think ignoring my own needs. So, my husband is actually in the process of writing his next book. And so, I wasn't asking for when I wanted date nights enough. So, that was a time that I went against kind of my own requests. And we had a big conversation about that literally last week. And so, now we have a weekly date night back on the calendar.
I love that. What do you find yourself overthinking about these days?
I think just business processes and if I'm using AI enough. Honestly, I spend way too much time wondering if I need to be more of a power user of AI.
I love that. What is a should, like an expectation that you've put on yourself that you've let go of, or one that you know you still need to?
Hmm. That I should just have it kind of all figured out when it comes to like the health front. I spent years in like biohacking. I was also kind of a former aerialist. So I was like an extreme athlete myself for many years. And now that that's kind of fallen off, and now I just pretty much walk every day, I'll work out once a week. I feel like I should have that figured out and a new routine dialed in, but I'm still working on it.
Love. What's something that makes you quick to get annoyed or angry?
Ooh, leaving our front door open and letting bugs in our house. So
Good
that's
answer.
something my husband likes to work on.
I
I'm
love
like,
that.
why is the door open again? We're going for a walk. Why?
What's a toxic thought you still catch yourself believing?
Hmm, that's a great question. I think there's just some shoulding occasionally. Like I'll should myself, like I should be able to do this or I should have this thing already figured out. Right. So I think there's occasional shoulds. I wouldn't say there's like one particular thought, but I do feel like I now notice and I see it. I'm like, ooh, noted. Uh, that is just an area of growth and not something to hold on to.
Love that. What's a wellness rule or trend you don't buy into?
Ooh, that I don't buy into. I would say the the cold plunging, especially for women. I was into cold plunging for a little bit, but I've read too much about the science and you need to sync it with your cycle. I think there's actually a lot of not so much truth to the power of
Interesting.
that in terms of mental mastery. Like I've seen a lot of people who are great at cold tubs but are easily triggered. And so I don't think it has the same effect, right? So I think the skills are applicable based on the category. It's like how you can be really bold at work but afraid to ask your partner for
Totally.
something. So I don't think the mental mastery element of cold tubs translates everywhere else.
I love that. Okay, cool. If you could leave my Welsh friends with one piece of advice on becoming more well than toxic, what advice would you give them?
To not judge yourself for having fear. I think that is one of the biggest things. Like fear is such a natural part of the experience. Fear is going to show up anytime you do something new. And so not holding judgment for the experience of fear.
I love it. Where can people find you?
So people can find me on Instagram at Melissa Nanavati. I'm sure that'll be linked because my last name is a mouthful to spell. And on YouTube at Peak Performance Love, and my website's also Peak Performance Love. So a little easier to spell. But I would love to connect with anybody who heard the episode, any questions, thoughts that you have, and just really looking forward to supporting your audience.
Amazing. Melissa, thank you for this. This was seriously such a powerful and impactful conversation, and I'm so happy to have connected with you. I appreciate it.
Oh, it's been such a pleasure being on. Thank you so much for having me.